The search is over. The Steelers have a new offensive coordinator, and they didn't have to look very far to find him. Quarterback coach Matt Canada is promoted to offensive coordinator. Let's talk about what he brings to this offense, what changes you can expect, and are the rumors true? Is he hard to work with? Let's talk about it. All right, so Matt Canada takes over as offensive coordinator for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He was, of course, the quarterback coach last year, hired right around this time, actually, to be the quarterback coach for the Steelers. They will promote from within, and I know that there's a lot of Steeler fans who might feel like that's the wrong direction for this team, that this offense was headed in such a poor direction. They needed to go outside the organization, get in completely new blood to breathe new life into what was a really stagnant offense. Now, that's not like the Steelers to do, right? I know that we have the recent history of hiring Todd Haley that way, but really Todd Haley's the only example. Randy Fichtner was an internal hire, as was Bruce Arians, as was Ken Wisenhunt and Mike Mularkey, and so many offensive coordinators that have been through Pittsburgh in recent years. Now, the Steelers did look outside the organization for guys like Pep Hamilton and Hugh Jackson, who also interviewed for this position. Clearly, the Steelers did, I think, want a change from what Randy Fichtner was offering as offensive coordinator. And I do think that Matt Canada represents a pretty big change in this offense, even though, yes, he was the quarterback coach for a year. And yes, they did try some of the Matt Canada, motions and shifts and whatnot. Really, though, when we get into the Matt Canada offense, you'll see that what Matt Canada, the sprinkles that they put into the offense under Randy Fichtner were really a beginner version of what the real Matt Canada offense is going to be. I mean, clearly, the Steelers did not want to keep the Randy Fichtner system. I don't think they're hiring Matt Canada to continue what Fichtner was doing, but just do more of that or better of that. I think they are looking for Canada to come in and change the entire offensive scheme. But what Canada can do, where I think Hugh Jackson and Pep Hamilton wouldn't be able to do, is because Canada's been here for a year, he can keep some of the verbiage, keep some similarities, at least be a bridge, right? A bridge between old and new, because that is what's going to happen here as we start talking about transitioning from Ben Roethlisberger to whoever the new quarterback is going to be. We still don't have clarity yet as to whether or not Ben Roethlisberger will return, but I think if he does return, this is at least a little bit easing Ben into what is going to be a new offense for him in likely his final year as the quarterback. Now, let's talk about Matt Canada and his kind of tenure throughout his career, because one of the things that gets said about Matt Canada is this is a guy who doesn't stay around very long, and he's gotten the reputation. Booger McFarland talked about this in an article with Sports Illustrated a couple years back, that Matt Canada is not easy to get along with, right? He's got that reputation about him. Now, it is a fact that Matt Canada has been, pretty much he's been coaching 1 year here, 1 year there for the past 10 years almost. This is his 8th job in the last 10 seasons, right? Going back all the way to 2010. He was at Northern Illinois for a year as offensive coordinator. Then he was at Wisconsin for a year as offensive coordinator. Then he was at NC State for 3 years, Pitt for a year, LSU for a year, Maryland for a year, then of course with the Steelers for a year as quarterback coach, and now he is offensive coordinator. So the fact that he's going to be with the Steelers for 2 consecutive seasons will be the first time in his career since NC State, and he'd have to go all the way back to before 2011 for another job that he had for longer than just a single season. And so, yes, he has, again, this is not a guy who sticks around very long, but I don't know that that's only because he's tough to get along with. I think it's because he's been very successful where he's gone, and he's been able to parlay that job into something else. And so, you look at that time at Northern Illinois, where he was in 2011, where that offense was very good, and they won the MAC that year. And so he went and said, hey, I'm going to parlay this into the Wisconsin offensive coordinator position, a much more prestigious position. And that year, Wisconsin won the Big Ten. And Brett Bielema, their head coach, decided, hey, you know what? I'm going to Arkansas. I'm taking the Arkansas job. And so Matt Canada was left without a position there. And that's when he went to NC State for 3 years. At NC State, he was actually very good. Now, he was fired from NC State. A weird situation because the last year of his offense, they were actually the 3rd best NC State offense in school history. And so they ended up letting him go anyway. He talks about them wanting to go in a different direction. A very strange firing at the time. I think you can even read articles if you go back and look about how people at the time were saying this is strange that Matt Canada is being let go now considering the success that offense had. And they were right because he went right to Pitt, where he was a finalist for the Broyles Award, which is an award for the best coordinator in the country. And that offense with James Conner and Quadri Henderson and Nathan Peterman at quarterback set records at Pitt, and they were an amazing offense that season for the talent that they had. He then goes to LSU, where, yes, he did that. That was the one where you can say, okay, things went very wrong for Matt Canada at LSU. He kind of butted head with Ed Orgeron. Ed Orgeron took over play calling that season midway through the year. He had to sign an NDA at the end so that they wouldn't talk about what happened here, non-disclosure agreement, so that neither side can talk about what actually happened between the two. That definitely ended poorly for Matt Canada. And then he goes to Maryland, where he takes over as offensive coordinator. But that was the year that, you had the tragedy there with the player passing away at practice. And, the DJ Durkin, the coach there, got suspended. And Matt Canada, who arrived in January as offensive coordinator, is now promoted to interim head coach by August of that season. So, hey, you're offensive coordinator? No, actually, you're the head coach now. And he takes that team, after all they'd been through that offseason, to 5-7, one game away from being bowl eligible. In fact, they were a 51-52 loss to Urban Meyer's Ohio State from being bowl eligible. That was a game that was in overtime, a missed 2-point conversion away from beating that team and going 6-6 and bringing that team to be bowl eligible. So while, yes, I think, look, what happened at NC State is strange because that offense was so good, and certainly the time at LSU was not good for Matt Canada, but everywhere else, the guy just goes and he puts together successful offenses. So we'll see what happens here. I think there's too much made about the fact that Matt Canada is, he's hard to work with, and not enough is made about the fact that, look, where he goes, he is successful, and he is an ambitious guy. And I think one thing, look, if we were going to worry about anything here, I think maybe you worry about the fact that Matt Canada will parlay this into a head coaching job somewhere else. And, be that as it may, right? If Matt Canada comes in and turns this offense around to the point where he is a head coaching candidate in a year or two, that's a good thing for the Steelers, not a bad thing, right? So let's talk about what Matt Canada brings to this offense. What is the Matt Canada offense going to look like in 2021? What can we expect? Well, the first thing, and you saw some of this last season, we know about the shifts and the motion. But as I said, that is what we saw last year was just a small dose. It was like the Fisher-Price, my first motion, my first shift, right? That version of the Matt Canada offense. What we're going to see in 2021 is a whole lot more of that, right? We're talking about shifting formations. The idea that you bring out one formation, you shift them in another one, right? You might come in kind of a packed jumbo set and then spread everybody out. Or go 3-by-1 on one side of trips formation and then bring it over to 2-by-2. Or maybe you shift the 3-by-1 to the other side. Look, he will shift linemen from one side to the other. He'll go jumbo with an extra offensive lineman. Then that offensive lineman will go in motion to the other side. It's crazy, and it looks crazy. And you might say as a fan, like, what is happening? This looks silly, right? We look like buffoons out there. We don't know how to get lined up, right? It just looks dumb. And I think that might have been what happened there with Ed Orgeron at LSU, whom Ed Orgeron might have looked at that offense and said, this is just a little dumb for me. I don't like this. And I think that might have been why the two butted heads. But here's what Matt Canada is trying to do with all the shifts and all the motions in his offense. What he's doing is he's getting multiple looks at every point that he's making those shifts. He may come out in a certain formation with a certain personnel and come out in that formation in 3-by-1. Right, and see how is this defense going to line up against me in 3-by-1. Then if I shift that same personnel into 2-by-2, right, how are they going to line up? Or if I line up one receiver in the slot and then shift him out outside, how are they going to match up against that, right? And get little snapshots every time he makes that formation shift. And these happen multiple times per play. Every time I do that, how are you matching up? Right? What defensive shifts am I seeing that you're making? And how can I then use that later on in the game to know, oh, well, if we go 2-by-2 in that set, we're going to have a numbers advantage on the strong side or on the weak side, right? How can I make these number advantages work to my benefit? And that's what he's looking for, right? And the other thing that's happening here is that when you're shifting from 3-by-1 to 2-by-2, you're also changing the defense's assignments. And every defender is having to understand what their assignment is from shift to shift. And then you're also talking about the jet motion that happens, and the defenders are having that in the back of their head. It's, again, we talk about all the potpourri that happens before the play, and even after the play with everyone running play action now. Well, Canada's adding that even before the play, right? Getting defenders always thinking about what is my assignment, who is my assignment on this play. If we're running zone here, are we pattern matching? Am I switching this off, right? What are we doing in 3-by-1? And now it's 2-by-2, and now I got to switch to do this, and we got to communicate, right? Getting defenders always on their heels every play, not sure of what they're looking at, is a big part of what Matt Canada wants to do. And then he's also going to be playing the misdirection game. You're going to see a ton of play action. As much as Ben Roethlisberger might hate it, I don't think Matt Canada is going to allow Ben Roethlisberger to go into a season with this team playing the least play action in the league. I don't think that's going to happen in 2021. Ben's going to have to get used to running far more play action than he may like, but it, again, will play to the Steelers' advantage because we talk about keeping defenders on their heels. That is the name of the Matt Canada offense. It's also, as I said, about finding numbers advantages, right? Understanding, hey, when we come out in these certain sets, I can get a numbers advantage here and trying to work that to their favor. And so guys like Deontay Johnson, guys like Chase Claypool, right? Guys who we've seen good in open field, good with the ball in their hand, if they have numbers advantages on their side, I think these are guys who can really excel in a Matt Canada offense. I'm looking for really big things from Deontay. I've been on record. I think Deontay Johnson is the most talented receiver the Steelers have on their roster right now. Now, clearly, he's had a bunch of drops last year. He's got to get his head on straight in that way. But I think in a Matt Canada offense, I look for him to really explode and finally become the top 15 type receiver that I think he has the talent to be, but hasn't yet shown on the field. The other guy to watch for in the Matt Canada offense is Anthony McFarland. Now, McFarland was on that 2018 team that Canada coached at Maryland. He was on that football team, and he was very good. He had 1,000 yards rushing that year. I think McFarland could be a bigger part of the plan here than we may realize. Look, certainly McFarland fell out of favor with the coaching staff at the end of the year. He wasn't even getting a hat on Sundays. But I wonder how much of that had to do with the fact that Ben likes to play with veterans out there, and Fichtner and McFarland may not have been a fit there. How much can Canada get out of McFarland in year two? Of course, we always see these running backs come in with the Steelers, a slow year one, but then they blow up in year two. Interesting to watch McFarland in this offense. So I'm really excited. I am excited about this offense. I think the amount of motions, the amount of shifts, again, it brings what I want from a Steeler coaching staff right now, which is a level of scouting and a level of self-scouting. As I talked about in that Randy Fichtner video I did last week, I think the Steelers really lacked self-scouting in 2020. And I don't think that's going to be a problem in 2021, because not only are they going to be self-scouting, they're going to be scouting on every play, right? Every play is a way for you to get the defense in a different situation that you can learn something about and take advantage of on the next play, the next series, the next quarter, or even the next time you match up with them. That's what I'm looking for from the Matt Canada offense. One other thing we should touch on is whether or not Ben Roethlisberger, is going to come back into a Matt Canada offense, right? Is this going to in some way drive him away? I don't think it will. Again, I think this is the one thing the Steelers could do to kind of leave an olive branch out there for Ben Roethlisberger and say, hey, Ben, yes, we are changing the offense, but it's not going to be, a whole change with verbiage and everything, like if they had brought in a Pep Hamilton or if they had brought in a Hugh Jackson. They're not doing that. So still an olive branch to Ben Roethlisberger, but I think this team knows, look, Ben's best days are behind him. We have to figure out not only, who our new next offensive coordinator is going to be, but we also have to find a successor to Ben Roethlisberger. And Canada, I think, puts them in a great place to fix what needs to be fixed about the 2020 team, right? And again, I think the first thing for Canada to do, if Ben's coming back, is figure out what worked about no huddle. Right? Because we all just look at that 2020 team and say they were terrible on offense down the stretch. And as I've pointed out, yes, they were terrible down the stretch. They were not terrible in no huddle. Figure out what that was about. Why did that happen? Try to diagnose that. Try to fix that. Obviously, try to fix the running game as well, because boy, if this team could run the ball even just 1 or 2 yards, that would be a major improvement over where they were last year. But I think you should be excited. I think you should be excited about what Canada is going to bring. I think you should be excited about the new shifts, the new motions and all of that, the self-scouting that Matt Canada brings to this offense. I think is going to bring a lot of excitement to the Steelers in 2021. Thank you for watching. Make sure you're subscribed, hit the notification bell so you will get every video here on Steeler Country. And I'll be back in a couple days with a look at the quarterback position right here on Steeler Country.